We said they need to create some chaos for Kansas State. Right now, it's Kansas State early here these first two possessions.
That foul will be called on Mafua, the super senior. Spent some time in Kansas at Dodge City Community College, native of New Zealand. And now Zai Walker with the second. Kansas State, the guard play, you mentioned Sundell in the open. Here we see Walker with that early steal. They felt like what Duke did to them, they want to try now and adopt a little bit of that physical mentality with their own guards. See how that plays out here for the next busy week for them, 3 games this week.
Well, and I think so much of that just comes from the length and the ability of this K-State backcourt to be aggressive, that they have to be out in passing lanes. You're going to have to take some chances. You can't gamble all the time, but when you have a rim protector like Ayoka Lee, it makes all the difference.
Lee on the precipice of a scoring record at Kansas State. We'll get more on that from Hannah Whetstone a little bit later here in this first quarter. Purple and purple, Central Arkansas in the road purple uniforms, K-State in the white as these two teams match up. It'll be the 6th ever meeting between the two. K-State's won all previous 5 meetings, the last back in 2022.
You can see early here how K-State has been able to jump out and contest at that 3-point line. You're going to have to force Central Arkansas into tough jumpers, mid-range looks, make them penetrate, and when you get a miss, you got to go the other way quick.
Trying to get a quick pass on the reversal to Lee, but it's knocked away by Cheyenne Banks, 6'4", out of Coffeyville Community College, inside getting the start.
Banks is going to, she's going to give him the most size inside, and so she's going to have to be incredibly active with Ayoka Lee. Do exactly that, force the ball out of her hands and then get good rotation out on the perimeter.
Difference for K-State this year, if this is the first time you've watched them, the 3-point shooting. Lee, fade away, soft touch.
Ball reversal gets her a good look as she's pinned deep into that low block. But that all comes from these Kansas State guards being unselfish, not taking guarded threes, getting a good look inside.
Wildcats come in averaging 22 assists per game, tops of the Big 12, largely because of Lee inside, but also because of their ability to pass. They've been together a long time. Another steal, Walker rips it away on the dribble drive. She tried to go through traffic, the ball knocked away by Central Arkansas.
We talk about sort of that mentality of what I think Duke has and what they did to Kansas State out in Las Vegas, is that you're going to clog the lane. You are not going to give them easy looks. What K-State got on their last offensive possession, good ball rotation, gets them an easy bucket by Lee. On the other end, you've got to be able to force people to the baseline, force them where there's help, and when they do get to the middle of the lane, you got to be incredibly active.
Banks has been pretty physical with Lee to start, at this time a little too handsy. She gets called for the foul, so we'll get a breather. And Destin Duckworth, transfer from SIUE, will transfer or come onto the court.
And now Duckworth is an interesting matchup, especially for Lee on the other end of the floor because she's got 3-point range. So if you're Central Arkansas, you got to figure out a way to move Ayoka Lee out of the middle of the lane. That's going to be for movement and getting your 3-point shooters some open looks.
Serena Sundell, who has been absolutely on fire here as of late, profiled her in the beginning. Lee, a close down, knocks away Bree Stevens, but gets called for the foul. Sundell, the last 3 games, is averaging 15 points a game, nearly 7 assists a game, and 5 rebounds a game.
Well, I think the other number that stands out to me, Brian, is that you have to look at some of these box scores, and she goes for 15 and 11 with 11 assists against DePaul, but just 1 turnover. That's 39 minutes of play. So there tells you about the consistency, and that so much of that comes from experience. Those are the kind of numbers, if you're Jeff Mittie, the expectation would be for Isaiah Walker maybe a year or 2 from now. You're not going to always get that, but that type of consistent play from Sundell, that is the expectation. Part of the reason why she is on a host of lists all throughout the country for Player of the Year nominations.
Sundell with it now. Feed into to Lee, double team, and the pass out is going to be over and back against K-State. So despite a 10-1 start, the Wildcats will turn it over. A couple of misfires as they try to figure out the Central Arkansas defense here early on.
And turnovers, probably that number, if you went back and looked at the 2 games that they played against quality opponents in Las Vegas, you had 18 turnovers in the loss to Duke, just 9 turnovers in the win against DePaul. Better ball control, handling the pressure, different matchups, different looks, but yet it is imperative that this team, and not only with their intact mentality, you got to take care of the ball.
Glenn trying to force the turnover, and they'll get it. The cut pass goes out of bounds.
Kansas State all season long is that you're going to fan shooters to the corner once that ball gets out in transition, being able to find open shooters, forcing the defense to have to choose. Kansas State gets another big three from Sides and forces yet another timeout by Central Arkansas.
The first one by Sides from well behind the arc, this one in transition, and the young lady who Jeff Mittie said shot lights out this summer and through the fall has been again great. Let's go to Hannah Whetstone with more on Taryn Sides.
Hey, thanks, Brian. That's right. Taryn Sides continues to improve her game and her confidence. The guard said last week, I think Coach Mittie has instilled confidence in me to shoot the ball. He said, let it fly. And she said, when your coach is telling you that, it gives you that free will and allows me to play looser. She says she thinks that's where she's done much better this year compared to last.
Well, and I think the biggest thing also, Brian, is you got to remember this is a young lady who's dealt with some injury issues as the season started. Once officially practice began, didn't see a ton of court time, didn't see a ton of reps. So all of that work in the summer had to kind of take a back seat while she got herself healthy and ready to go. The minutes continue to increase, and you find a lot of consistency now coming off the bench for this Kansas State backcourt.
Two-time 3A Kansas Player of the Year from Phillipsburg and Central Kansas, and Sides growing into her role as the backup and instant sort of spark off the bench. Whatever role is needed. There's Walker and Sides with Sundell in the backcourt for K-State. Eliza Maupin has come in. Wildcats continue to dominate this game to start. Sundell's pass intercepted along the baseline. Just the second turnover for K-State, who opened the game on a 21-1 run. Out of that last time out, Central Arkansas trying to add to make it 2 buckets in a row. Knuckle-bowling, three-pointer won't go, and Sides gets the rebound. Maupin wanted an alley-oop. It comes late, and it lands with Taylor, who puts it up and in.
Yeah, broken play. Kennedy Taylor running the floor to get herself a mop-up and a putback, but they looked for the alley-oop, kind of seeing if they couldn't get the lob to Maupin, not there, and it was a late decision by Sundell.
Third steal already for Walker. She'll miss the layup. Sundell to clean it up.
And this pressure here early, we talked about how Central Arkansas had to apply the pressure, especially in the half court, but this Kansas State team is making them pay for their mistakes, creating great offense and easy offense with their defense.
Walker with 3 steals for K-State's 5. It's now 11 on the year for Walker, the lead team, the Wildcats. A dominant first quarter. And a running layup put up and in to answer this run by K-State.
The back-to-back buckets inside in the paint for Andrea Wright, the 5'7" senior. She was a second-team All-ASUN selection a year ago. Also part of the preseason All-ASUN list. But that's just keeping the penetration alive. You go back to the last play, a great mop-up and hustle by Kennedy Taylor to get herself loose. And then Ziana Walker can't finish on the left side, but that's why you follow every single one in. You've got to have sort of that wingman coming the other way. That time it was Sundell for the easy putback.
Sundell with 4 points, couple of boards, 2 assists in the early going. Again, stat sheet stuffer. Drive here by Cheyenne Kemp over to Banks, who just returned. This big center for Central Arkansas at 6'4". Has the ball knocked out of her hands. A little bit of a shorter bench for K-State here today. No Gisela Sanchez.
80% of its scoring from a year ago. I think Tony Kemper really lauding the fact that their roster stuck together, that they come back knowing they had maybe themselves some unfinished business from a year ago. So close to the NCAA tournament when they were in the ASUN tournament finals.
Guarded 3 will miss it.
You can think about how they are putting together pieces of the puzzle. We talked about that at the very beginning of the season, is that you've got to be able to think about each game as an opportunity. Young players getting more minutes, new faces, fitting into the mold, putting players in different spots, giving them more minutes against certain opponents, all of the things that come in the non-conference, how you set yourself up. Right now, we're seeing that out of the gate here. 17 points off those 10 turnovers that they were able to generate. You're seeing the pieces of what they want to do, which is a transition game, play fast when you can.
Double team coming to Lee. She turns and fades away the baseline. An added part of her game the last couple of years is that shot, and it has made all the difference.
Well, I think her ability to be able to turn over both shoulders, that is one thing that you preach to young post players all the time. Do not become one side dominant. You have to be able to use both hands. You're going to have to be able to handle the defense coming at you from multiple directions.
Jenna Cook rushed into a three. She'll miss. Still without a three-pointer down is Central Arkansas. Again, one of the nation's best three-point shooting teams.
Second in the nation, averaging just shy of 12 made threes a game. Keep in mind, as a team last year with most of this group coming back, they knocked down 204 on the year.
Good skip pass around, finds an open Walker. Lee cleans it up, couldn't hit it, gets another rebound, slams it off the backboard. I think she felt there was going to be contact and didn't get it. So she'll pad the rebound numbers a little bit. Clear out for Central Arkansas into the paint. The double dribble is right. Got tied up working against Zy Walker, who has been phenomenal defensively. Amani Lester back in to get a look at what happened the last offensive possession for K-State.
Well, that's that post deep in the lane, but that's also so she can't, no one can come on that weak side to be able to knock it out. She's deep in the lane. You turn to the baseline with the fadeaway jumper. That's just the good hands and the ability to kind of read and see what is in front of you. If that double team comes from the backside, then that's the one you've got to kick out. If not, you're going over the defender.
Little different look now with Lester inside as K-State tries to bring the Louisville transfer along as another possible post-depth player behind Taylor. Shot clock under 10. Sundell. Shut off on the drive. Poindexter. Shot clock under 3. Fade away. Off the rim. No. And Wright chases down the rebound.
One of the best defensive possessions for Central Arkansas so far today. They were much more active, and without Lee in the ball game, that does change how this Kansas State offense operates.
On a switch, Fisher being guarded by Lester. Glenn having to decide to defend inside on Banks. And Banks will muscle it up and in. Gentlemen, just like me.
6 seasons at Marshall before he came back to Central Arkansas, where he had been an assistant for both the men's and the women's programs in Conway. So high 50 be pleased. Now the timeout was taken because he wasn't happy with the switching and the defensive effort on the last possession by Central Arkansas. But so much of this comes from their ability right now to be able to knock them off the three-point line. And this Central Arkansas team has not been able to find anything from deep.
One of the strengths of Lester, as she drew the foul there on Banks, is her ability to pass. And you see it here, being able to find Sundell.
It's great court awareness and understanding that when you feel that double team coming, and that's where a lot of post players, you have to evolve into that with time and with minutes logged on the floor. You got to almost be able to feel the added pressure, the added defender behind you. When that comes, someone will be open.
Sundell raked across the arms as she goes up for the shot. So Serena to get a couple of free throws. That'll be on Upshaw, her first, team's second here in the second quarter. K-State already with this game in hand began 21-1 to open the contest. The 9th-ranked Wildcats, who may fall out of the top 10 when the poll comes out tomorrow, but in hindsight, it would appear Duke is a pretty darn good basketball team after they went and won that tournament, the Bulldogs Classic down in Las Vegas, taking down 2 top 10 teams, both K-State and 8th-ranked Oklahoma.
Yeah, they beat Oklahoma in overtime, and Duke has a lot of weapons, and their athleticism, I think, is one of the things that really frightens a lot of teams in the ACC and the others that they will see in their non-con. Keep in mind that Duke will play South Carolina in the ACC-SEC Challenge, which takes place coming this week.
That should be a rather interesting battle. South Carolina looked very healthy in their game against Iowa State. Another foul underneath, another rebound by Lester. So Lester doing what is asked of her. Go get boards, play defense, and pass.
You got it, and pass without turning it over. Those, I think, are the big key factors when you think about making that substitution for K-State with their front court. If you're going to take Ayoka Lee out of the game, I don't necessarily have to replace it possession and point for point. I need you to rebound, defend, and be a
Jerome Tang hit 21 three-pointers, second most in K-State history in a game, and scored 120 points. The Wildcat women off to a fantastic start, although an answer banked in three by Bree Stevens, and that is the first of the day for Central Arkansas. So now 1 for 7 on the Sugar Bears. Again, came in leading the nation in three-point makes. Little heat check three by Sides and a tie-up underneath. And we're going to get a jump ball. Initially, it looked like Kevin Pethel was going to rule a foul, and he changed his mind, decided, no, we're going to give it a tie-up, and the arrow to K-State.
Yeah, possession stays with the Wildcats. That is just simply being able to trail the dribble drive and create open space. You got to relocate yourself, and that's what Jalen Glenn did on that last three. She was 1 of 8 from behind the three-point line against DePaul, just 2 of 12 from the field for that game. She's been shooting over 40% from three, back in the friendly confines of Bramlage Coliseum, and knocks down a good look from behind the arc.
Wildcats running the baseline out of bounds play. Eliza mopping back in, and a travel on Sides as she caught it.
A little indecision right there from the sophomore. You've got to be able to catch in that triple threat, and you see that screen coming. You want to use a full head of steam and get around it quick. Just wasn't sure whether or not she should use it or not, and that's where you get that little extra step and the turnover comes.
Just the 5th turnover by Kansas State. Right back of the game, picked up by Sundell. Hedge on the screen means Lester guarding right. She'll miss it, mopping the board.
We talk about defense from your post players who come in and make the transition. The transition offense, also a big piece of what this Kansas State team has done. But Imani Lester forcing Central Arkansas guards to have to shoot over. That's good defense without fouling.
Sides comes in to knock it away as the ball was intended for Abiara, sophomore from Mansfield, Texas. Sides with that beautiful pass. In transition here to Sundell, who's in double figures.
A double outlet from Maupin to Glenn, and then you run the opposite lane. And that's just heads-up play. And a great sign also because Serena Sundell, the one out running the lane. The last 3 seasons, she would have been the one with the ball in her hands.
Team on fire yet again.
Well, the versatility of what Serena Sundell brings to the floor, finding range from behind the three-point line, then also making something happen and finding the trailer in transition, and Jalen Glenn knocking down another 3. We said it, she did not shoot the ball well when they were in Las Vegas. If I'm Jeff Mittie, I'm looking for signs. I'm looking for the ability for this team to bounce back. The aggressive mentality, but also a bit of resiliency. You have a game where it doesn't go well against Duke, you bounce back, you play well against DePaul as a total, but from individual performances, they weren't necessarily always there. But I think this has been a great kind of segue in this important stretch. 3 games, 5 days, all at home, all against opponents that you know that you are going to be physically bigger than, that you are going to have some definite advantages against. What does that look like? Well, that says I got to put some different people in different places, and we got to figure out a way to win. And it's not always going to be pretty, but right now this K-State team firing on all cylinders.
Dominating performance, a 16-3 run now here in the second quarter, and it's not just been on the offensive end. K-State has locked up the Central Arkansas team on the defensive end. And again, Jeff Mittie, I mean, on practice yesterday, again, talking about a level, a standard of play that he wants his team to shoot for each game. Don't worry about the score, just go get that standard. On a switch, Maupin guarding out high on Kemp. Three-pointer drilled by Duckworth.
And Destin Duckworth, the 6-foot junior forward, giving him about 12 minutes or so this year off the bench. But one of the keys to her game, she can pull you out of the middle of the lane in that post and knock down threes.
It'll be a foul on Sides as the ball was thrown away. Glenn tried to save it. Sides, a loose ball foul, has her 2.
This last 3 from Central Arkansas comes from a switch and going underneath the screen, and Duckworth just a pick and pop out top. And great release, a quick release over the outstretched arm of Kennedy Taylor and knocks it down. But either way, that's a good sign for this Central Arkansas offense. You can see the pieces are there, they just have missed so many good.
Sundell with a game-high 14 here in the first half. She's outscored Central Arkansas by herself. Shot clock under 10. Maupin wanted to do a high-low with Taylor, but couldn't get it. Now it's into Taylor. Triple team, knocked to the ground. Everybody diving for the ball. The Sugar Bears come out of there with it. 2 minutes to go in the first half. Long three put up and an air ball by Stevens, or by Fisher. K-State will have the ball.
Kinley Fisher, the 6th player of the year a season ago in the ASUN. One of the leaders of this team, draws praise from Coach Kemper. It goes back to that idea that this is an older roster for Central Arkansas, a lot of experience that came back from a season ago in his first year. That says a lot. Create that culture, you put the right people in it. And I think Kansas State really kind of feeling as though they're in that same way. Jeff Mittie understanding how fortunate he has been to have a player like Ioka Lee make the decision to come back for that next year and for that extra season, and what that does for the possibility of where this Kansas State team can go this year with some new added faces and younger players stepping up. A lot of good things happening early just in this month of November, and now I guess we are technically in December.
Here we are, that's right. Who knew? It happened all of a sudden.
Very quickly.
Ioka Lee, speaking of sudden, maybe a little too quick on that post entry and put up. Maupin knocks away the ball in the backcourt, still trying to get it. Bodies flying everywhere. Central Arkansas with the ball, shot clock at 5. Another near steal by Maupin. Lee sends back one from Upshaw, and a shot clock violation will give the ball to K-State.
And that's what happens when you chase this Central Arkansas group off that three-point line. Make them into mid-range jump shooters. Force them to put it on the floor to attack. You've got the rim protector and Ioka Lee on the back.
Capcoat upside down. I don't know if that has any special significance there if you get a shot clock violation, but Maupin showing off the athleticism on the drive.
One dribble and finish, but that's a great decision by Eliza Maupin. Just to be able to go hard, one dribble, not allow the defense to catch up. You wait for it and go.
Offensive foul on a screen. That'll be the 4th foul on Central Arkansas.
And more minutes coming for Eliza Maupin because, as you said earlier, Brian, no Gisela Sanchez. She is unavailable today due to injury. And so now that's going to kind of free up a few more minutes.
Central Arkansas will try and wind this down and look for the final shot. See the difference between the game clock and shot clock. Only about a second. The ball turned over. That's not what Central Arkansas wanted. Poindexter ahead to Walker. Tried to step through, and is going to get called for the travel.
Yeah, she took one extra before that foot got down and there was contact with the ball. Maybe thought she got hit on the arm. Either way, a tough place to catch. And there's the extra right there. From Ziona Walker. She doesn't necessarily agree. There was a ton of contact, but I believe that's how you handle that pick and pop that we saw on a couple possessions by the Sugar Bears. And also that attack mentality. You want to keep your foot on the gas. You cannot take it off. This team cannot get complacent. They have to continue to be active on both ends. And you just can't have a little bit of a breakdown here or there. Poindexter turns her head, gets beat on the back door, and now it's going to send Central Arkansas to the free throw line. This is going to be about a 20 minutes of keeping everybody playing tight, digging in, and doing what's asked of you. That's that attack mentality. It doesn't always have to be able to go, go, go. It's to stay dialed in to what's being asked of you by your coaches.
In other words, playing to a standard, which is what Jeff Mittie has talked about. First free throw in for Kinley Fisher on the drive, the foul on Poindexter. And for more on what Tony Kemper wants to see the second half, let's bring in Hannah Whetstone.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Tony Kemper was obviously very frustrated with his team coming out of the locker room, but he told me he wants to see his team perform better overall, and he just wants to see this team play within themselves the second half.
Yeah, focus on us. Usually the message, don't worry about the score, just worry about the next 4 or 5 minutes. Lee, right side, flips it up and in.
I think that's a big piece of it. You got to take it in sort of those 4 to 5 minute segments. And how can you compete on each and every one of those, whether that's to get stops or to increase and to have more of a high intensity on the defensive glass, to be able to make more plays, to share the basketball better. All of that within the framework of what they want to do. There's no doubt that this team has a lot of pieces of their puzzle out on the floor. Sometimes it's just about figuring it all out. And Coach Kemper also said they didn't play great when they went on the road to Oklahoma State either. So now they've gone up against 2 Big 12 teams and have struggled a bit. Sometimes it's about matchups, but sometimes it's just about having cold night from the field as well.
Sundell with a little head shake. Nice movement. Sundell remains absolutely perfect from the field. 6 of 6, 2 threes, and continues to lead K-State in scoring at 16. Sundell's shot has always been a little flat just because of her height, 6'2", to maybe almost a little taller with those long arms. On the switch, Fisher steps into the mid-range.
We see K-State still working hard to keep Central Arkansas off that 3-point line. If you're going to switch, if you're going to go under the screen, you better communicate defensively.
Sundell, another 3. This one's short, so we jinxed her.
First miss of the day.
Upshaw in transition. Gets past Walker and lays it in.
And for Upshaw, just her second bucket here of the game. She's got 4 points now, 2 of 6. We talked about her at the beginning about being able to be the top scorer for the Central Arkansas squad, averaging over 18 points a game, 45% from 3. Hasn't been able to get it to go. But Kansas State just riding the shoulders of Serena Sundell, and Upshaw able to answer on the other end. Both of them know what it's like to carry the weight of a team. Serena Sundell had to do it 2 years ago with no Ioka Lee available last year. Most definitely getting the All-American back in helps a ton, but you can see, I think, that she's just sort of settling in and blossoming into much more of an assertive scorer in this first month of the season, and that's a great sign for Kansas State.
No doubt, because she's a difference maker with her length and her size as a guard.
Versatility is a buzzword you're going to hear a ton of in college basketball over the course of the next couple months. You'll hear it in both the men's and the women's game. 3-level scorers, those are all the things people are going to talk about. Serena Sundell, absolutely one of the most versatile players right now in the women's game. You'll see it in the Big 12. But as you talk about top-level competition from other Power 4 teams that the Wildcats will go up against, her game will be on display.
This week, Kansas State playing a bunch of games just before finals, trying to get it all in. They'll conclude the week with Texas A&M on the road. That'll be another chance for K-State to...
That is the jump that a player has to make from their freshman to their sophomore season.
New career high in three-pointers made for Sides. Kansas State not easing off the accelerator here in the third quarter.
We said how important that would be, is that you've got to think about how you put together possession after possession on both ends. This has been a much more aggressive Sugar Bears squad for Central Arkansas, coming out of the locker room and understanding they just can't settle for threes. You're going to have to attack this K-State defense. But on the flip side, this Wildcat team getting good movement in their offense, finding open shots, and being much more patient to get those good looks.
Often pressured at the high post. Walker tries her hand at a 3. That'll miss. Central Arkansas the ball. Central Arkansas had just 13 points in the first half. They have 12 here in the third quarter. To your point, driving and finishing as we get another look at Sides.
The step back just to avoid the defender, but it was a good next pass by Ziana Walker. Could have taken an open 3 on the corner, but instead gets it up to her fellow sophomore in the backcourt who knocks down that 3.
Hoppin recovers to get the block shot. Sugar Bears recover defensively. Walker airballed the last one, too strong on this one. Mafuo the rebound, will lead the break. Upshaw in transition, off the mark. Taylor the rebound.
And that's one of the really good looks that Jade Upshaw has had today from behind the 3-point line. This Kansas State defense has not allowed her any good looks.
Taylor into the paint. And another one that nearly rimmed out but falls. Taylor with 4 points. Came in averaging 10.6 rebounds here through the non-conference. Kennedy Taylor, coming from Missouri State, has been exactly what K-State hoped for in their backup center spot.
And some limited minutes against DePaul as just 13 points in 10 minutes.
As we go into the second half, Walker has been kind of one of those still looking for her place. Coming from Louisville last year, didn't really want to be taking over as far as leadership on the team, but sharing those bringing the ball up the floor duties with Sundell. Sundell still kind of technically is the point guard, but Walker also dealing with bringing it up against pressure. You've seen her come out of her shell a little bit and kind of take over. Like you can see as this team will transition this year from one era to the next, you can see the future with Zai Walker being the focal point and the leader de facto of this team.
Well, and it's a big responsibility. It's not a simple task when you're a young player to be able to be a vocal and also producing point guard. One of those things for Walker is that she's got, and I think you see it early here in this season, is that she's playing within herself, not trying to do too much. She played in every game a year ago and gave K-State big lifts and big moments throughout the course of the season. But yet you got to think about long and more minutes, and I got to be on the floor 25, 30 minutes a game. Play within yourself. Do what is asked of you. There's going to be nights where she's got to distribute and she's got to be a lockdown defender, and there will be nights where she's going to have to be more of a scorer. All of that blends together, and that's the evolution of her game.
Well, she has shown the ability to go up and score. 16 against Little Rock. Had a big game against Milwaukee, a near triple-double in that game, finishing with 9 boards, 9 assists, and double-figure scoring.
And you mentioned sharing the ball handling duties, and I think that's where teams sometimes struggle, is that you can pigeonhole yourself and say, well, we've got a point guard, and they're the one that's going to handle the basketball. It's got to be a group effort. There is no I in team. And when you see pressure and you understand that ball's got to get up the floor, I need to make 1-2 passes to be able to get somebody a layup, that's the unselfishness. But both Zyanna Walker and Serena Sundell tied for leading this team in assists per game. And those are great numbers. It's a wonderful sign because that means that you don't have just one person that's having to carry that load out front.
You have sides added to the mix that can bring the ball up and trigger into offense. And even Jalen Glenn, we saw Jalen Glenn a few years ago really serve that role before Walker arrived.
Balance in the backcourt. It is one thing coaches can absolutely, they wish for it, you hope for it, and when you have it, they love it.
Good start to this quarter for Central Arkansas, but quiet as of late. They have not scored the last 3 minutes as K-State's tightened the screws defensively and made their adjustments back. Kemp off a screen over Poindexter. Tough three won't fall, and Lee the rebound.
Those are tough threes over the extension. And a big piece of what Kansas State has done defensively today is to not give them those threes, but when they've had them, they've been contested looks.
Sides and an ISO on the right side. Up top, Lester playing the forward spot with Lee in there as well. Here's Lee on the baseline, and on a turnaround jumper, and Lee in double figures.
She loves that side of the floor, and if you're looking at a scouting report, you say, make Ioka Lee go to the other way. Make her turn over that other shoulder, but right now the comfort level and the ability to read where the defense is giving her back-to-back buckets and the ability to go back and use that fadeaway jumper.
Duckworth working on Lester. Nowhere to go. Dribble drive. Shot won't fall. Lee the rebound. That's number 5 for Lee to go with 10 points. Limited minutes. The Wildcats have tried to rotate as many different players in as possible in this blowout. Repost for Lee. This time the hook shot. Couldn't get it.
What was in front of her, they were going to shadow to the corner. You leave that ball handler open, and with her range, she's going to knock it down.
Hannah talked about that earlier. Sides saying that her confidence feeling at an all-time high. 15 for Sides off the bench, 5 of 6 behind the arc.
And a 14-2 run for this Kansas State team over the last 6+ minutes of this third quarter.
Another rebound by Lee. Final 10 seconds of the quarter. K-State could get a shot here. Poindexter working her way into the paint, lost the ball. In command as we go to the fourth quarter. Wildcats have hit 12 three-pointers. They have dominated points in the paint. They have ripped off a 28-0 mark in points off turnovers. Led 21-1 to start, and it has been all K-State since. Lee on the feed down on the post could not make that easy layup, and Central Arkansas comes out of there with it.
Yeah, the Sugar Bears have gone to a zone look. They did that into the third quarter as well, trying to just figure out a way to shut down this guard game for Kansas State, having been so hot from behind the three-point line, but yet the Cats in that third quarter go 3 of 6 from behind the three-point line.
Terrence Sides, a career-high 5 threes, 1 of 4 Wildcats in double figures, 2 other with 9 points. Sides was loading up for another. Lester left wide open. She'll just drive and miss the layup. Couldn't get the rebound. Lester has the ability, better maybe facing the basket than away from or posting at the basket. Good finish by Wright on the other end.
Kind of getting a full head of steam to be able to go at the defense. And that's where the high-low action that Jeff Mittie likes to run with his post players can come to be a benefit for someone like Lester, or even Eliza Maupin, who we saw go one dribble in that first half and finish at the rim. Either way, you're going to get those touches, and you got to find a way to finish and clean up misses and be active on the glass.
Lester able to operate in there without Lee. Lee moving posts away for the basket. Lester gets the offensive board and put back her first basket. Cook hit on the arm. That'll be the third on Sides. Andrea Wright, you mentioned all-conference guard a year ago, coming off the bench this year, and then Lester.
And that's just good position by Lester. This K-State team has not had to generate a lot of second chance opportunities because they have shot it at a blistering pace of 61% from the game. But just to be able to get position and know that you got to have a nose for the basketball when that shot goes up. And that 1-2 punch of size in the post, a big added lift for Kansas State. I think one of the pieces that was missing a season ago was to have a really consistent front court mate to Ioka Lee. This K-State team can play small, they can play big. You can have big guards out front, you can have athletic, versatile wings, but you've got to be able to have that good balance in the post as well. And I think that not only is just about scoring, but it's about position and rebounding as well.
K-State will have 3 posts in the game with Maupin, Taylor, and Lester.
Mixing it up.
Trying to play with some different lineups here for the Wildcats in the fourth quarter. Sundell, we add her to the mix. That's 6-2 added in. Sundell will get fouled and get to the free throw line. We saw Jenna Cook on the other end shoot 2 free throws. Cook, a freshman for Central Arkansas, one that Tony Kemper is high on. Let's go to Hannah Whetstone, who has more.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Head coach Tony Kemper said that Jenna Cook is one of the hardest working kids he's ever coached. He said she's playing behind seniors who are experienced and she's willing to learn from them. He said he's excited for what the future looks like for Jenna Cook.
And these modern times that we live in, it's not always easy to understand that you're going to have to sit and maybe bide your time, be patient.
It's incredibly tough, and we are in a landscape of college athletics, not just in college basketball, where you don't necessarily have to be patient. Impatience is one thing you see all across the country, but to have young players come in, be willing to soak it up, to be able to learn, where 90-some% of your scoring and rebounding returns from a year ago, there's not going to be a lot of minutes for young players. So you got to take that time, you got to earn it, and that's a player like Jenna Cook doing exactly that in Conway right now with Central Arkansas.
Lester meant to try to get it into Taylor, but fired it out of bounds instead, so a turnover by the Wildcats. See the end of this right, make something out of nothing.
Yeah, and Cook makes that happen, keeps the possession alive. A lot of active hands by Kansas State in that trap off the tip, and that's just a heads-up play then to attack.
Stevens didn't catch it clean. That allowed Lester to recover, get the block. Glenn sets her feet, short on the three-pointer. Rebound comes out high. K-State another chance here.
Get out of there.
Lester, keyhole jumper, just strong. Gets her own rebound, couldn't hang on. Here's Cook. Unable to hit the three. 2 of 18, Central Arkansas from behind the arc. So those numbers that they had built up early in this season will go by the boards as far as leading the nation in three-pointers made. Some of that against some NAIA opponents, but you mentioned this earlier. If you're Central Arkansas, and we see this every now and then, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it later this week with Eastern Illinois and USD Upstate. It's not so much trying to focus yourself for conference play. You're trying to build for one specific time, and that's the conference tournament. That's it. Those 3 games and the game at the end is all that matters, understanding that from the get-go.
In the world of mid-major basketball, you are dealing with an opportunity to win one game to get yourself that automatic berth, that automatic qualifying bid into the NCAA tournament. It is few and far between to find mid-major conferences where they will be multi-bid leagues. It's always most normally going to be one. We've seen it a couple times out of the Missouri Valley. Last year, the Ivy League had 2 teams in. It does not happen very often. This is the Central Arkansas, what shapes them ahead. I think you're going to look at a game like where they will see themselves December 29th when they play at Arkansas. That is an Arkansas team that has now lost to Oral Roberts. They have lost to Fairfield, 2 quality mid-major teams on their home court. That is a winnable game for a team like Central Arkansas, but this is all building. It's building yourself. You break it into 3 sections: non-conference, conference, and the conference tournament. You want to be peaking in that week in March.
Which they did a year ago, as you said at the outset. Got to the title game, just lost it. Traveled by Banks.
And it's such an interesting story because they are part of the Atlantic Sun, where Florida Gulf Coast has had great domination in that league. But things have changed now at FG, at Florida Gulf Coast. Their head coach, Coach Semesco, has left in the first 2 weeks of the season to go be the head coach of the Atlanta Dream in the WNBA. They've got a new coach there now at FG at Florida Gulf Coast. So I just think it's going to have a different dynamic, look a little bit different. The players are the same, but sometimes that doesn't always translate.
Yep, 100%. Ball movement by the Wildcats. Shot clock winding down. Glenn throws it up at the rim for a chance. Didn't quite get it to go down.
And that movement of coaches in the WNBA has now impacted the Big 12.
That's right.
Because Lynn Roberts, who is just in the midst of starting her 10th season as the head coach at Utah, one of the newest teams into the Big 12, has left, and she has taken the head job with the LA Sparks on the WNBA, which means that Gavin Peterson has stepped into the head coaching role at Utah. He has been the associate head coach there for 5 years, had been with Lynn Roberts her entire time there in Salt Lake City. He takes over that program. But again, that change mid-season, I shouldn't say mid-season, I mean, it's like the beginning of the season. Yeah. It's really strange to see. But I would tip your hat and give kudos to front offices and franchises in the WNBA who are thinking a little bit outside the box, but also understanding that some of the best coaches are in the women's game. And I would also say that those WNBA franchises are having to come with a little bit more cash, because that is one thing you will see. These college coaches, it's going to have to be worthwhile for them to leave their job, leave that kind of the consistency that they've had in that position to go to the W. Not always the same, but I think these franchises have decided they're going to ready to pony up.
Now, WNBA has had a surge, obviously, in popularity. Caitlin Clark factor, call it what you want. I mean, a ton of great play this last season. It was so much fun to watch, but it also, I think it drove home the point that, one, expansion needs to happen for WNBA, and number 2, everything's got to be up. Take it a step up. It can't just operate out.
Host of great games that we have seen over the course of this Thanksgiving holiday. I think one of the biggest surprises and surges on the national level has been the play of TCU. They find themselves at 8-0, and not only did they have that big win against Notre Dame, they win 76-68. And then they've got another one coming up themselves. I think it's just been the way that they handled South Florida.
Dominated every game, and so we'll see how they do against the Longhorns. You saw they're ranked 5th in the country. West Virginia, TCU, K-State, Iowa State right now, and Baylor with a big win again today. Those are the teams that are most of the time getting the rankings and have been in the conversation about the top 10. We'll see about the new poll coming out. TCU may make a claim to be in the top 10 when the new rankings come out. K-State may fall out, but still be in the shouting distance
Yeah, that new poll will come out tomorrow. Kansas State, as it has sat today, they were in at 9, West Virginia 12. Iowa State was in at 15. They took a tough loss to South Carolina, but then they themselves able to get that bounce back win over Middle Tennessee, 75-59 yesterday. And then you had TCU that was in at 17. Baylor had fallen out of the top 25. They were receiving votes, but I think, as you said, with a couple of very definitive wins for this TCU squad, they very much may find themselves in that top 10 because of some other losses over the course of the last week or so around the country.
Good start by Oklahoma State. J.C. Hoyt's team. Sides looking for number 6. Could not hit that. Taylor another rebound. Outlets out. Also on those records, Kansas off to a pretty good start.
And I think Kansas with a big win against Auburn in their Thanksgiving tournament. You put those neutral site games, but that's an SEC opponent that you're able to get a W against. And a team, I think, for the Jayhawks with some great talent returning, but then there were some holes and some question marks because they had a group of super seniors that no longer on that roster, and that just kind of changes things of how they were going to go about it this year. But I think that's a great win against getting Auburn in that neutral setting for the Jayhawks. And I would remind everybody, if you're going to tune in and you have a chance to see, I think it is Flow Sports. For those of you that have a subscription, if you can see West Virginia, Texas tonight. Remember, those are the top 2 returning defensive teams in the Big 12 a year ago. That meant with Texas moving on to the SEC, West Virginia, the top defense coming back this season in the Big 12 for 16 teams.
So good. In the backcourt is West Virginia, led by Jordan Harrison and J.J. Quinterly. Maupin makes the second of 2 free throws. Everyone that has played has scored for Kansas State. Sitting comfortably in front here, putting the finishing touches on win at number 7 of the year. They'll have a busy week. Eastern Illinois on Tuesday. USC Upstate from South Carolina coming in. We'll play here on Thursday and then on the road at A&M next Sunday. So a busy week ahead for Jeff Mitty's group.
Well, and I think these 3 games and 5 days here at home, this is going to be a great benchmark of how this team sort of bounces back, and then how you continue to move around the pieces within all the chess pieces on the board for matchups as well as lineups, and who's going to get minutes here, who's going to get minutes there. We know that big part of the conversation with Ayoka Lee is sort of that load management, how they use her, when they use her against certain opponents. That's going to be a big factor here over the course of the next 4 to 5 days.
Upshaw free in the lane. 6 points for the leading scorer of Central Arkansas, who came in averaging 18 a game. Totally shut down today by Kansas State. 2 of 18 for the Sugar Bears behind the arc in today's game. A great pass from Maupin. Picked off. In transition. Fisher could not hit it. The ball out of bounds to Central Arkansas. Good to see Fisher back. She took a nasty whack. Just didn't mix up for a rebound with Taylor.
Yeah, that was
earlier in the game.
Yeah, in the 3rd quarter, late into that 3rd quarter, took an elbow on a board. Kennedy Taylor kind of hammered her right across the face, but even had enough bounce back to her step and back in the ball game. One of those players, kind of a team leader for Coach Kemper, and you're going to see Kenley Fisher just take one right across from Kennedy Taylor, and that is incidental contact for everyone that looks at it. She's simply coming down with the basketball. Probably felt a little bit of a buzz, eyes watering, nose running, the whole thing, but it seems as though everything is still intact and in place.
Yes.
And the 5'7" senior transferred to Central Arkansas from Mercer. We mentioned it earlier, 6th player of the year a season ago in the Atlantic Sun Conference. So a big piece to this roster for Central Arkansas.
I love the smile on the hand, the wave, just to make sure everyone watching back home, hey, I'm all right.
It's okay.
Everything's good. For more on Fisher, let's go to Hannah Whetstone.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Missy, you mentioned it, that Fisher was the Atlantic Sun Conference 6th Woman of the Year. A year ago, head coach Tony Kemper says she's earned that starting spot. He said she's a leader for this team and how she approaches games and her ability to organize things on the court for the Sugar Bears.
Yep, it's different roles. Sometimes it requires a different style of vocal leadership, and Fisher has brought that. One of 4 preseason all-conference picks for this team. Taylor at the high post. Extra pass, finds an open Poindexter. Unable to hit. The Wildcats not quite hitting shots the way they were earlier in the game.
And most definitely have cooled off. Now 53% on the game, which is still an outstanding number for this Wildcat squad. Have spent most of the ball game north of 60% from the field today. You look at some of the other statistical numbers that are going to add up of what this team has done on the offensive end. 24 assists for Kansas State on 31 made field goals. They've shot 48% from behind the three-point line. But it has been, I think, the relentless defensive pressure that we saw right out of the gate when they went to that 15-1 lead and forced Tony Kemper to have to use one of his first timeout to see if he couldn't settle down his squad, and Kansas State just never let up from there.
Final 90 seconds. Saw a shot of Ayoka Lee on the bench. Lee will finish the day with 12 points. So that means the record watch will move to one more game. We'll turn our attention to Eastern Illinois on Tuesday. And Lee will need 13 points in that game to break the all-time scoring record. Wester finds Taylor, double team. Shot clock at 5. Poindexter fouled as she drove in. Poindexter, an interesting case study for K-State, began the year absolutely on fire. The All-American from Tulsa. And you thought about, as you talked about some of these other teams in the league, look at TCU with Prince and Van Lith and Cotter. They got 3, right? They have those 3 people that can do a big part of damage. K-State's got that 3 too, and they thought Poindexter was the missing piece, and it looked like it early this season. We haven't quite seen the scoring drop in for Poindexter here the last few games. Should you be concerned at all if you're K-State, or is it just a stretch of games where that's just the case?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a point of concern, but I think you have to put it into perspective that this was a young woman that came in averaging 20-plus a game a year ago at Tulsa in the American Athletic Conference. Now you're going up against some Power 4 teams each and every time out. That not always is that level of scoring going to translate. I wouldn't look for Poindexter to be a 20-point scorer this season. She's going to need to be 8, 10, 12.
Right.
That you put her in that middle number. Exactly. And I think also it's about possessions, and it's about understanding where you're going to get good looks. She cannot simply just be a three-point shooter. I think that's one of the things we saw early in the season. She was hot from behind the three-point line, and that was great. But you're going to have to be more versatile. That teams are going to scout that. They're going to put a hand in your face. They are not going to allow you just those wide open looks, and you saw that. 1 of 7 from 3 against DePaul. She was circled on the scouting report. They said, we cannot give her wide open looks. What's going to be the difference? So she's going to have to also understand the situation, but that scoring will come, do a little bit of everything.
Well, she's done it so far. She's second on the team in blocks with